Here.
Mr. Ranger's not here. Mr. Morton?
Here.
Ms. Epstein's not here. Mr. Wilbur?
Here.
Mr. Carr's not here. Ms. Witt? Here. Ms. Marmello is obviously here. Mr. Morris?
Here.
And Mr. Rebecca is not with us either, but we have 6 members, so we have quorum.
And Ms. Heil is an excused absent.
Okay. Thank you. And would you please make the public involvement announcement?
All of our AMATS meetings are public meetings. The public is invited to comment on different items. If we have a business item, we'll have a presentation by the staff or by consultants. At that point, the committee will be given an opportunity to discuss it and vote on it. So we'll do that for every business item.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes or revisions?
Move to approve.
For approve.
Second, just a question for discussion. If we don't need to take action on the obligation report, do we need to move it down for informational or we just address it? Doesn't matter.
Get to it.
Sounds good.
All right, so we're moving to approve. And you said second? And Whit, Jennifer seconded. Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as is. There are no minutes at this time. I know that there will be some coming to us next month.
We'll have at least 3 sets, if not more.
Okay.
And we'll get with you
Is it already done?
at what time ahead of schedule so you can look through them.
Okay. So moving right along, we are on to the business items, and first is the non-discrimination implementation plan.
Vivian will present that. She created this beautiful creature.
Thank you, Vice Chair. First of all, I'd like to introduce James Alvin, who's the new DOT Civil Rights Officer. And he's important because we worked very closely with him as well. And so if you have any questions about this later, then he'll be able to answer some of your questions. Federal transportation regulation, well, for this item, you have a memo, and you have the TAC review draft, AMATS Title VI non-discrimination plan, and you also have an excerpt of the FHWA certification report from 2010. Federal transportation regulations require NPOs such as AMATS to demonstrate and certify to the FHWA at least every 4 years that we are in compliance with Title VI requirements of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Now, Title VI requires non-discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin for programs that are federally funded. And 49 CFR Part 21 is the U.S. DOT implementing regulations for Title VI. And basically, those are the assurances that both states and NPOs need to include for every program, and also requirements for reporting and documentation that we are in compliance with these regulations. And there's also compliance enforcement that they can take away money if we don't do this. So it is important that we do this. And 23 CFR Part 200 is the FHWA's Title VI program implementation and review procedures. What that does is it added gender to the FHWA Title VI program. So now what we have to do under Title VI is race, color, national origin, and gender, which is not directly pertinent to Title VI, but it's included in the Title VI program. And that's important to realize because there are other laws out there that pertain to non-discrimination for age, disability, and creed, but those mostly apply to employment. So what we're talking about here is Title VI. And later, executive orders added under national origin, low-income and minority populations, and also that limited English proficient populations are included under national origin. So that's where we are. The last certification we had with FHWA, we had, up until this time, AMATS had never had a corrective action. This time we did, and one of them was for Title VI. And it's there, basically what they wanted us to do was to provide assurances and have a Title VI implementation plan and complaint procedures. Now, AMATS does have assurances in the interagency operating agreement, and they're all there. So we've done fine on making assurances. Where they weren't sure about is our demonstrating that we are actually implementing what we said we were going to do. And under 49 CFR 21, that's where this requirement comes in. The regulations don't require a plan per se, but the guidance does. There's guidance on the FHWA website, and they give out in training. So that's basically the requirement here and why we're doing this. Now, we didn't have any money to do this until this year, and UPWP funds were provided in Task 531 to develop the Title VI plan. We met with FHWA. Oh, one of the requirements was that we worked with DOT closely, and we did. So we met with DOT on January 23rd, and Edie Zukaukas, who was James's predecessor, gave us a list of elements that the plan should include. And it took me a couple of months to get my head around all the regulations and to develop a substantial draft. We got a draft to DOT in April, but I could see that, and it went through 2 revisions with them. I was concerned that we might not make the deadline of June 1st, 2012, which was given to us by FHWA. So I called Chris Riesenberg, and I said, does the fact that we've developed a substantial draft before the deadline comply with the intent of the corrective action? And he agreed that it did. So I felt confident about that. So the heart of this plan, what we're committing to do in this plan are in several different sections. There is a new policy on page 7. We have the assurances that are in Appendix A. There's a policy that must be signed by the organization's CEO according to guidance. And there are, I can just step you through the plan. There's policy, there's an introduction, there's the role of AMATS, and then there's AMATS primary responsibilities and Title VI considerations on page 11. And under 3 of those groups, we've developed some mitigation measures to help demonstrate. They're like action items that we're going to do to demonstrate that we're going to have good faith, demonstrate good faith. And then under ensuring compliance, there are the assurances, the notification of benefits for protected classes, and the Title VI complaint procedures on page 16. Edie told us that we cannot investigate ourselves. And so the gist of that complaint procedure is that if we receive a complaint from anyone, it will be referred to DOT, period. That's it. It's not going to go to anybody else. It won't go downtown to the OEO or anybody, because it's the OEO, so that it's DOT who adjudicates for AMATS. So they clarified that for us. The other thing is that there's a work plan on page 18. So hopefully after this plan is approved, then we will get to work on the items that are listed on page 18 as our work plan for the rest of the year. Also, there is a new role for Craig, and that is the Title VI coordinator. And his duties are outlined on page 19. You'll notice there are quite a few. There's practically 2 pages of them. But we don't have to do all of these at once. But these are tasks that we considered and thought about and that we can commit to. You all are going to be interested, I'm sure, in looking at the mitigation measures on page 12, 14, and 15. Those are specific things that we said we would do. So I don't know, I hope you've had a chance to review this. I know you all are busy, but so if you have any questions, I guess we could just stop there and see if you have any questions.
Question on page 12, the litigation measure, that third bullet, TIF. EJ analysis. For each new tip, conduct an environmental justice evaluation of tip projects similar to that prepared for the MTP. Have to admit some ignorance of that part of the MTP, so what would that look like? What would the process be for that?
For the MTP, what we did, first of all, we mapped the projects with an overlay of where minority, well, limited English proficient people live, low income and minority people. And then there was an analysis of one of the appendices for the effects of the projects and transit recommendations on those populations. So it is in there. And as I understand it, we are supposed to do that for the TIP as well as for the MTP. It's must, right? And we've never done that before for the TIP.
I can wait for open the floor, and then I'll come back and just have some general comments, some overall comments, and maybe some scheduled questions, if I could. So, Vivian, on the timeframe, maybe for the benefit of the committee and for your benefit, you know, at public transportation, we have our own Title VI plan that we have to do for public transportation. We do that for FTA, and and our planning section is in charge of doing that. Similar to, as you've identified, Craig as the individual responsible for making sure things happen and making sure that I think it's the chairman of the policy committee be the one that designates, that basically says it all happens. It's, for us, it's very similar. It's the planning manager, and I think the signator is me as the director. So I'm not managing the day-to-day, but so I think a lot of the consistency there, we have to do the same thing even when we do a significant change in our transit operations. We have to do a Title VI analysis of some kind, whether it be for fares or service or whatever. So, but schedule-wise, I have not had time to take a look at all of this. Is there reasons? Because what I would like to do is to make sure that it's consistent with what we're doing in our own process, and then there's something better in here when we're updating ours, which we will be doing in the coming months, that they're the same, both coming out of kind of the MPO, even though they're here. So schedule-wise, is there a significant detriment to give us a little bit more time to make that? Because I frankly haven't had the time to do the comparison between the two, and that's just my schedule, not necessarily yours. So maybe Craig or Vivian, give me some
No,
insight to that.
I anticipated that might come up. So I did ask Chris Riesenberg if that's okay, and he said that was fine.
Okay.
If you needed more time to review.
Okay, thank you, Vivian.
Mhm.
Take a step.
Yeah, but just sort of a general question. Some of this you're already doing, right? It just now it's not a plan. Is that correct? I mean, your Title VI reporting responsibility, is the Title VI report that's due September 30th, is that done anyway already? No?
No.
Okay.
The only time that we do this is through the certification. I guess we should, right, through the certification. We don't have complaint procedures on our web, and that's a big no-no. We should have that on here.
The only thing that I can think of that we do is with the sign-in sheets, we turn those in, you know, on some kind of basis. I can't remember which one, but Tana takes care of that, where she, you know, all the lists that show who signed in, and what kind of nationality or male, female, whatever, take those lists and give them that information. That's the only one I can think of.
And I should say that we did do, with the MTP outreach, we did make a concerted effort to reach out to the limited English proficient people. We had the newspaper insert was translated into 3 different languages, the top 3 languages, Spanish, Korean, and Tagalog. And we did our best to get those out. I think that we could have done better at the distribution. But I gotta tell you, building relationships with people and trying to figure out who the right groups to send that kind of information to, it doesn't happen. You have to do that ahead of time. Like, we should be doing that now in our downtime. Not that we ever have any downtime, but I mean, we're not under the gun to get the MTP out. now's the time when we need to be forging those relationships for the next time, so that we will have that plan of action. We don't have to wonder who we're going to send this out to, you know, and it varies by language. It's not like there's one cultural group out there that we can call on to distribute these to everybody. I mean, it might be the grocery store, it might, you know, but I think we did we reached out to low-income people. I know we did a much better job with that this time, as far as that.
Has there been an assessment of, you know, for following the recommended procedures here? Is there any direct implications for staffing time and resources? I mean, is it going to cost half a position to have to see to this plan's implementation? Or is it just other duties as assigned for Craig as the AMATS coordinator? I mean, is it anticipated that there's going to be a lot more effort required in our development of the TIP, for example?
Well, there could be. I mean, but you know, we have to do it. We just have to be focused and dedicated to get it done. And I think it's the kind of thing where once we get started, I think it'll be easier. You know, there may be some startup intensive time, but I think it'll be easier to monitor and maintain it as we go along.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Are there any questions or comments from the public? No? Hearing none?
Madam Chair, I would move that we postpone the action on this item and take it up at our next meeting for recommendation to the policy committee. I, for one, really would like to make sure that there's consistency between what AMATS is proposing and what we already have in place in our department. And I apologize to the others if you're ready to go, but I'm not. Just, I want to make sure that's the case. And the second part is I would agree with Vivian. I think that we, due to the efforts of Ann and Gary as our contractor, when they did develop the MTP, they did a lot more of the EJ and Title VI efforts, and I think even recognized and illustrated what they did when we adopted the MTP, which was great. So I also think Vivian's right. I don't think we're doing anything wrong. We just haven't documenting what we're doing. And I think that's what FHWA is looking for. And so I think that's what this plan is. We say we're going to do it, we are doing it, but we're actually documenting that we have and how we have. And I think if the plan illustrates that, then I think we're in good shape. So I just asked the committee that we postpone for a month, please.
I second.
So moved by Mr. Roebuck, second by Ms. Beck. Are there any opposed? Hearing none, we are so moved.
Vivian, I'll get you our comments as soon as I possibly can. So I appreciate that.
And also the org chart might need to be updated with names.
That was the most, yes.
Next item is our third quarter obligation report.
Okay, this nothing new to the committee, but I'll quickly refresh your memory on what everything stands for. This is a listing of all the projects that are in the TIP. The first purplish color column is what is the dollar figure that's in the last TIP amendment that was approved. The next column, the greenish column, is what's been obligated so far through previous obligation reports, any changes that were approved by this committee or the policy committee. And blue is what we anticipate left to obligate. So at the end, the purple and the greenish column should equal, or the greenish and the blue column should equal the purple column, or close to it. Any big ones?
That's great. Wait, they're color here?
It's all gray, isn't it? It's all gray.
Number on the columns for your Chris.
Doesn't he have some Title VI protection?
You are not protected.
I only do.
Are there any additional handouts?
They're up there, although I have one up there actually. So the one just to note, Eagle River Rehab is the big project this year because we plan to AC an additional 18 million from next year into this year. So if we have any projects that we don't think we're going to obligate or will run short of our full obligation, we'll put it all towards Eagle River and AC less from next year. So that's the one that's kind of holding out, waiting to go. Down the list, O'Malley Road, $1 million. That one will probably slip till next year, but we'll leave it on until the next obligation report. And like I said, if it doesn't go, we'll just add that to Eagle River Road. Pavement replacement program, that's Diamond Boulevard. We're still planning on obligating that this year at $12.3 million. Dowling Road, we de-obligated some money, but now we're going to add a little bit more money back in there to fund some utility relocation. So that'll happen here any day now. Abbott Road, 2.5 million, still planning on obligating that. The new things at the bottom, the South Anchorage Hillside study, that looks good. The Driftwood Bay study and the freight mobility study, the last one, those will probably slip till next year. We're working on getting a local match from the municipality on those lined up. The household travel survey will most likely happen this year. On the second page, you see some de-obligations. We went through a whole process to close out some old projects over the last year or so. So those are just old projects that closed out and de-obligated the money. When we de-obligate projects, that money goes towards construction overruns or additional projects. Chester Creek Trail connection, we anticipate additional $420,000 for mitigation costs. And everything else is done on that one. On page 3, this is our CMAQ program. Everything is on schedule to obligate exactly how it is listed in the tip, and you see some de-obligations there at the bottom. On the last page, this is where we total it all up. The row that says total AMATS allocation, you see there's $36.3 million in the tip. We've obligated 4.4 of that, and we anticipate to obligate 29.9, so we're at the 34.3 mark, which is $2 million under right now. So we'll see where that number ends up, and anything under will go towards Eagle River Road, and we'll AC less for next year's program, which is a good thing. It will give us more money next year. And then the bottom are just some other ones that don't affect the fiscal constraint of the tip, just to show some other state-funded or NHS-funded projects. So if you have any questions, I will try and answer them.
Did you say household interview survey will be done this year or would not be?
Yeah, we'll try to obligate the money this year and get the RFP out.
Yeah.
The last time we did that survey was done in the spring, so that's, the idea would be to get the RFP out in the fall and conduct it in the spring.
Any other questions or comments?
One thing that came up at the policy committee meeting was a expression of concern by Mr. Flynn about the amount of ACs. And just from a technical standpoint, the technical committee and the TIP, Ms. Lance will remember from so many years ago, there's a lot of flexibility that we have when we do AC money from the next year into this year, because you're at less risk of losing money. If we had, for example, programmed the entire amount for Eagle River Road, that is the 26 million basically, and we lost that project in FY12, we would lose 26 million. This way, now there's only $8.7 million of FY12 funds supplemented by next year. And this has been especially important, this ability to AC, or advanced construct is what they call it, has been especially important when we've had such unreliable or so many unknowns about our funding levels. And at the policy committee too, the policy,
Sorry. Wait, you asked Steve.
Yeah, so the bad people have to stay.
so the policy committee too had asked the staff to go ahead and look at FY14, and right now our STIP expires in 13, or excuse me, our TIP, our AMATS TIP. and to look at adding 14 and 15 to ensure that we have enough projects in the making and to look at different scenarios based on the new authorization. So that's just kind of an update, but thank goodness for ACs. And like, even though you may have projects that you can't obligate that are fairly low cost, you have a project that can absorb all of the funds and decrease the amount last year. So that's my little pitch for raw and ACs.
Please let the record show that Mr. Rebecca with that statement.
So I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Regarding AC, Jennifer, one of the things that I've been asking my staff about is we have about half of the money we need right now in this federal fiscal year to buy our next replacement of 8 buses. We're waiting for the next federal fiscal year to actually take effect in October so that we can apply for the money so that we can make an order. Do you think it's possible we could AC? I mean, we only buy them every 2 years anyway, but what we've been doing is we have a year of money, and then we hold, and then we wait for the next year of money, and then we get that money together, and then we do a purchase, and
Are
then.
these FTA funds or these?
CMAQ, they're CMAQ funds.
I don't know why you couldn't.
Because what we would, I mean, we only order every 2 years, we just have to wait for the money every 2 years.
Could
So
we borrow?
we could just AC next year's money this year. We don't, it's not gonna affect our development of our program. And then the year after that, we would have that money and then request the AC for the next year, because we need $4 million, at least $4 million to put a bus order in, because they're about 400 grand a copy. But we're waiting so long and we lose opportunities for good pricing, because we buy when Cleveland or Pittsburgh or New York or other people buy, so we get a much, much better price. But sometimes we lose that when we're waiting. So one of the things I'm gonna talk to Craig about is want to get together with him, because we have some need that, kind of like an AC, and some other things we'd like to do. It's not that the money, we don't, now that the budget kind of been settled, we're missing opportunity for good pricing, just waiting for the next federal fiscal year to come in play when the money's continuing to get programmed. And so, anyway, it'd be something I'd be interested to talk to Craig and Bart about, and maybe you had some insight of whether or not we could actually do it, so.
I don't know off the top of my head, I don't think it'd be a problem. The only thing is we transfer those funds to FTA.
Right.
So you're not usually using the FHWA dollars to buy the buses. So I don't know if you can AC money and then transfer it.
We do it anyway, we just do it every year.
Yeah.
And we do the transfer annually. We get the money, then we transfer annually. And when we combine the two, then we go buy. What we want to do is AC it, transfer it, and then go do the buy. And we have the match,
Yeah.
so it's not our problem, it's timing, and we're losing a lot of time. So.
Yeah, it'd be a good follow-up
I'll talk to
conversation with
Craig
staff.
and Bart about
I
that.
don't see anything from a programmatic, from a tip management
Okay.
standpoint.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
It's one of those innovative financing things.
I'm all about the innovation.
Are there any questions or comments from the public?
So there's no action required?
No action required.
Yes. Postponed action.
Thank you, Barbara. Is there any other business at this time? Hearing none, we are moving on to the informational reports. Looks like we're State of Alaska Legislative Appropriations Report.
This is something from the public participation plan that we have lined up to do this month. So I just put together a listing of capital budget items that went to DOT projects. So I can go through the list, or if you have questions. The big ones are the Midtown traffic congestion relief, $10 million. That'll go towards the 36th Avenue interchange, Muldoon and Glen interchange, and Stewart Highway. And there were a ton of other Anchorage projects that went to the municipality. They did very well this year as well. So I don't know how much detail you want me to go into these, but if you have questions, probably Ken can answer some of them better than I can too. So you can see that the GF that went to DOT was $41 million, and then the GO bond is the big one, it's $101 million if it passes.
Did you have a comment? Any questions or comments from the committee?
One.
Mr. Rowley?
Bart, how many of these are kind of the last ones that connect Anchorage?
Oh, that's a good question, I don't know.
Okay. So we'll probably do another, we need to do another
Mhm.
Connect Anchorage.
I just got an inquiry from the mayor's office about Connect Anchorage, so.
I had mentioned it to Lynn after the last policy meeting.
And we did a search and Gary Jones, CIP coordinator, found a status sheet from 2010.
If you need anything else, Bart had done that status update, and we have the original agreement and everything.
It would be good to send it. I don't know who's got those municipalities. So if you could send it.
I can do that.
We throw nothing away.
Well, that's good sometimes. Sometimes that leaves a big pile of,
You know, one thing, if you just look at the numbers here, the only one that's included that's outside of the AMATS study area is the neighborhood highway bridges. But when you look at the dollar amounts here, and you consider we're just coming off on the heels of adopting our MTP, and you just look at, it gives you an idea that maybe even our revenue assumptions, who knows, they may have been conservative, because we certainly hadn't anticipated a GO bond deal for another year or two. And the investment into transportation on the GX side even exceeds what we had anticipated from year to year. So it's actually, can't wait until our next one.
We're gonna be starting that day very soon, so. Is that Steve?
Along those lines, Jennifer, I'm wondering whether you could say anything about the recently signed federal transportation bill and the implications.
Yes, there's, I'm glad you mentioned that, I was going to bring that up at the end. The MAP 21, the map is,
Moving ahead in front.
here we go, 21st century. It's a 2.5-year bill, or 27 month, so it's this last quarter in 2 years. Authorization bill, there's still a lot of analysis going on about the changes. There are some things that we're finding that Alaska offers special exemption in terms of some flexibility that we previously had between the Surface Transportation Program and the National Highway System. There's also some implications that could affect Alaska for how we allocate money to our community transportation program. The assessment I have from headquarters, who are, folks are looking at the numbers based on what is out there, and it looks like AMATS as an MPO would be likely kept whole on our funding, and there could be impacts to FMATS. They're still looking into that. We're still assessing what level of flexibility we have. But actually, statewide as a whole, they thought that we might see about a 10 to 15% increase over the last couple, 3 years that we've had under continuing resolution, which I think still puts us above maybe the overall level that we had under Safety Blue.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be good, and actually Chris Rosenberg is on the phone from FHWA. Chris, if I'm off there, if you want to correct me, or if there's anything else you'd like to add?
No real corrections. I think one of the highlights that I picked out of MAP 21 is something you guys have been heading down the path already of performance management, and that will go the direction that you were talking about, maybe changing how money is allocated. Change the formula a little bit and things along those lines. A lot of it is in development now. There's in MAP 21, there's requirements for federal highways or USDOT to come out with some national performance measures, and then that the state and the MPOs work toward targets to meet those performance measures, and those things are in the works now, so there's a lot of stuff that'll be coming out. and we'll also be coming out with different guidance for any of the change areas. So there's a lot to be seen, but it's definitely good to see that extension, at least having through 14 funded at a pretty consistent level from what we've had in the past, which it was scary there for a little while during some of the discussions in Congress on where we were going to end up. It's nice to be getting a pretty big bite instead of these little bites that we've been getting in the past. It should be interesting because it being a 2-year bill. Some of the things take about 2 years to implement, and then the bill will be looking for a new reauthorization at that time. But yeah, it's definitely interesting times, and we'll have to work with you guys as we move forward on any of the changes there that come with. So if you have questions, I definitely don't mind. I probably won't have answers to them, but if you work through the DOT, and then we can figure out what we need to do for some of the changes. But thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. The thing that I had failed to mention that you picked up on was the heavy emphasis on performance management. And there are a lot of things in there, either new emphasis areas or that can be carried forward and considered as AMATS staff is looking at retooling taking a fresh look at our selection criteria for the TIP. And to maybe align them with some of these either funding availability categories or emphasis areas. So that's, I see there's kind of 2 big efforts. One is amending the existing TIP to show, because right now it ends at 13, to show 14 and 15 based on, we have more than enough in our program to fund another couple of years. But as we start selecting new projects, how is AMATS going to focus the selection? And that's where I understand, Craig, you're working up a detailed agenda or schedule for the next, because within a year we have to have a new TIP. So it's kind of exciting, though. It's the TIP amendment that we just passed last month reflected, when we originally developed the TIP, we had assumed that there would be a 35% drop in 13, so we brought that back up. Now we continue that level over the next 2.25 years.
Are you at DOT doing any sort of fact sheets or summaries or anything that maybe we could get?
Actually, the headquarters has done some pretty extensive work on it that's still in draft. We do have some really good links to AASHTO, and I think
AMPO.
and AMPO and FTA. I think maybe if we get they have some of the
Short and sweet.
easy ways to understand the big differences. Why don't I get that to Craig and send it out to the committee? I mean, in advance, we haven't got, no, we don't have any Alaska specific handouts yet, but I think as it develops, we need to get it posted.
One thing I did notice that's relevant is there is a TIPIA expansion, but it's not very much. It's not anywhere near what Cavada was thinking might happen. So that's relevant to our work. And Bike Ped has some changes too. It's
Yeah, they reduced the number of funding categories, consolidated a lot.
Are there any other committee comments this time?
Do you think Gary could put one again in those?
Absolutely.
Give it to us next week.
For
this month, I mean.
So Craig, did you want to say anything about this, or was it just provided?
Oh, I just provided a copy of the letter from NHWA stating our MGTs forward. So that was dated May 25th, so we have until May 25th, so we'll get the next one done. Put it on the calendar.
Starting within a year. All right, so the next scheduled AMAT meetings, our policy committee meeting is 2 weeks from today. And that should be downtown. And then our next month's technical advisory committee is on August 9th. We have put a couple of them out there so you can see when they're upcoming. And is there any other informational reports at this time?
Just one comment on our previous conversation. If there are these good links and fact sheets, that may be something the public in general is interested in, so maybe not just disseminating it to us, but somehow.
If we
I
can
can-
put the links on the
Yeah.
AMATS website, that would be,
Put a constant contact.
because
last
FDA
time.
has some out there, I mean, there's some good
Yeah.
analyses, so that would be great.
Whatever that thing's called.
Anything else? We good in order?